Hi friends, it's Carl again with another edition of Calm Survival. And we're still talking flashlights, but this time we're talking about what makes a good flashlight and what makes a bad flashlight a bad flashlight. That means we need to get a little bit farther down into the weeds on some of the ways that they're built. But we're going to talk very specifically because LED flashlights have a couple of quirks that are worth knowing about. Now, anybody can basically take a look at, a flashlight and go, that's going to be pretty durable. It's, if you compare it to a, dollar store or a hardware store, 10 for 10 bucks pack, that can fall off a shelf and it's probably going to be fine. We can all pretty well do that. But when it comes to LEDs, there's a few other factors that you may not be aware of. So the first one is LED dimming. Now there's two basic ways of dimming an LED. The difficult way is to actually physically allow less power to the LED. The reason that's difficult is because it requires very specific LEDs that won't change color too much. So you can find that on some very high-end lights, but in general, they use a method called pulse width modulation. Now, when you get a low-end, inexpensive torch or flashlight, this can be very, very obvious. Now, if I take this torch and I wave it in front of the camera, all those little shadow images are not the camera, okay? They're actually the peaks in the light being turned on and the light being turned off. On a very expensive flashlight, those peaks will be closer together. It takes more circuitry, it takes more engineering to get that really quick, rapid change. On a cheaper light, they're going to be bigger and farther apart. Just to your eye, 9 times out of 10, those are indistinguishable. If the light is on 50% of the time, it's on, you're going to see 50% of the possible light. However, when you work close, so if you're looking at something close to your hands, you're trying to focus on some detail, or you're moving around where there's things in your peripheral vision, you're going to see those little flickers a lot more. And that can be extremely, extremely tiring. So a cheap flashlight, while it can get you by, if you're having to use it for any length of time, and especially if you have any vision problems, it is going to be super tiring, super quick. So that's something to keep in mind. That's one of the reasons why some flashlights, especially good, reputable ones, kind of are priced the way they are. Now, if you have a chance to try a flashlight in a store, basically all you do is you turn it on, you kind of just wave it really quickly in front of yourself, and you will be able to see that blinking. Now, obviously, if it's a high-powered light, don't shine it straight into your face. A lot of people will shine it into a mirror, and that'll give you a really good indication of just how blinky that light is. The next thing is we have whether or not the LED is regulated or unregulated. Now, a lot of lights that have a really, really high output number, a lot of those are actually going to be unregulated lights, especially if they're also fairly cheap. So as you can see, we're going to start off higher, but we're quickly going to drop below the other light, and we're going to fall short. With the regulated light, we don't get as high at the beginning, but we're gently using that power. Now the battery will also come into play here. So certain types of batteries really don't like being pushed really hard, and so they'll actually run out a little quicker. Again, that's getting a little deep down, but it's why some flashlights will just seem to really like alkaline batteries and they won't like other kinds, whereas some doesn't matter as much. So that's something to look at. This will be a cheaper light and it'll potentially be brighter. This will be a more expensive light, but you've got the potential for running longer. Another factor that is worth knowing about is something called CRI, which is color rendering index. Now, basically, when you have an LED, unlike an incandescent bulb, which is kind of producing a nice curve of all of the different frequencies of light, LEDs kind of produce in chunks. Now, to our eye, it mostly looks the same. But just like if you've ever been in a building where they've been halfway through the upgrade conversion and they're halfway LEDs and halfway fluorescence, or halfway LEDs and halfway halogen or mercury vapor lights, you can really see that just colors seem different under cheap LEDs. They're really, really muted. Now, that 9 times out of 10, you can just deal with. But especially if you're somewhere where there's a lot of shades of one color out in the trees, a low CRI light will make it really hard to pick detail out of something. You've probably also seen, flashlights, that say, warm or cold. It's same like in your house when you go, buy your new LED bulbs. I can't say that cold works better for spotlights, because I actually find that the colder, the more blue the light, the lower the CRI, but that's also a bit my eyes. So that is one of those things where if you're using a flashlight a lot, you're going to find that you get some preferences. I find in general the warmer lights tend to look better, tend to give me that color response I want. But that's a different thing. Another factor is also the color of the light. So, all of my lights that have batteries in them, there we go, they're all fairly white, but you can definitely find cheaper lights where the color ends up looking a little bit green or a little bit purple. And again, that's part of the nature of cheap LEDs. They're white, but they're not really. And again, those cheaper LEDs, especially if there's 5 or 6 in a bundle, in a cluster, and one of them is an odd color, it's just irritating. So apart from just the basics of durability, there's a reason why certain lights are going to be cheaper and why certain lights are going to be inexpensive. Okay, we want to look for inexpensive lights. We don't want to look for cheap lights. And again, that's going to take a little bit of looking and hunting. So my recommendation is definitely, if you are in a position where you want to buy lights, but you don't have money or you don't have time to do the research, probably spend a little bit and find some of the more reputable brands, especially the companies that primarily just do lights. Some of the companies that do a lot of other products, they, over the last few years, have definitely been slipping a lot more into selling on marketing numbers rather than good performance. But, there's also plenty of enthusiasts who like really good lights. And that means that good lights are getting manufactured cheaper and cheaper all the time. So hopefully that's going to help you have a bit more of an idea on, just why are you spending that money? Why is that, light priced the way it is? I've been Carl. This has been another Calm Survival. We'll catch you on the next one.